Okay, we'll call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Bell?
Here.
Trustee Brewer? Here. Trustee Grant? Here. Trustee Jazinski?
Here.
Trustee Todd? Here. Trustee Williams?
Okay, our first item is Bernardi Security Group. They're coming to give us a review of the parameters of the revised ordinances based on the other share. Mr. Dean and Mr. Bell.
Someone's calling. Thank you.
Oh, is that mic on? Nope, it's not. Your president is a little right there.
Working? Okay. We're on. All right, good evening. Thank you, everybody. Good to see everyone again. We're here to discuss the bond refinancing again. I'm Bob Dale with Bernardi Securities. With me is Chuck Thurman from King McKenna. You should have received the parameters ordinance, which is a big legal document, bond ordinance, as well.
Yeah.
Hear me better now? If I hold it. Okay. So there's a bond ordinance that you have in front of you, as well as a short presentation that I wanted to run through and update the board with the savings, timing, and the bond market, and then answer any questions you may have on the ordinance. So with that, if we start maybe with the presentation and turn to page 1. Good news is interest rates keep dropping. This graph shows it. You'll see this is a 10-year recap. So if you recall, the two bonds that we're looking at refinancing are the 08 bonds and the 09 bonds. So if you look on the far left-hand portion of this graph, it begins in 2008 when that first series of bonds was issued. That graph will show you where the interest rates were at that time, as well as the 09 bonds. All the way on the right is where we're at today. So from that standpoint, we're not looking at issuing any new bonds. This is just a pure refinancing of the prior issue. You'll see that savings there is a couple hundred basis points in interest rate savings. Getting into the actual numbers, page 2. This is an update on the 2008 bonds. You'll see we're not changing the term of the bonds. The 08 bonds have a net rate of 6.11%. After a refinancing, if we could lock that in today, we'd be able to drop that interest rate to about 2.58%. So that net savings is about $1,480,000 just on the 2008 bonds. So pretty huge savings, about $165,000 per year. If we turn to the next page, page 3, this is a recap of the 09 bonds. The net rate on those bonds is 4.61%. If we could lock that in today, this goes out 1 year longer than the 08 bonds. That rate's about 2.65%. So savings there are about $670,000, or about $60,000 to $65,000 per year. So combined, page 4 shows you the net savings by refinancing both of the bonds. Previously, we were anywhere between $1.8 million and $2 million. Now we're over $2 million. We're almost $2.1 million, but $2,087,000. So that net rate combined with the old bonds, 5.74%, to about 2.62% today. You're cutting the rate more than in half. So from that standpoint, that's an update on the savings. From a timing standpoint, page 5, where we're at today, we were here back in July when we laid this out originally in the refinancing opportunity for the village, the refinancing team was engaged at the last board meeting, July 23rd. We've put together, Ice Motors put together some of the bond documents, including the ordinance that you have in front of you tonight, as well as the official statement. And we actually got good news this afternoon. You did qualify, the bonds did qualify again for BAM insurance. So we got the call from New York today, and they're going to keep the same prices they had on the issue back in June, which is the numbers we've been using all along. And we were able to qualify for that bond insurance, which was huge. That's why we were able to basically capture that low interest rate. So this is basically the first reading of the ordinance. We're here to answer any questions on that. And then this will be up, we asked on the agenda for the board meeting next week for approval. At that point, we're going to hopefully have the official statement done by the end of next week. And the plan is to price the week of August 15th. At that point, that's when we would lock in the rate. And then we close on the bonds just after September 1st. I don't know if you had any questions. Chuck, did you want to say anything?
Well, just adding to Bob's presentation, obviously you can see there's some pretty tremendous savings for the village. As the financial advisor of the village, we would strongly recommend that the village take advantage of this situation. I mean, it's historically low interest rates. You've all read reports of what's going on in China and other places around the world. While that's usually bad news, and the bond market is good news, so the village is in a good position to take advantage of that.
Any questions?
Thank you for that.
Okay, we'll put this on the agenda for next week. You vote.
All right.
And then once we do that, I'm sure you keep us updated. Hopefully by that time, because you're going to go out to market right after that.
Yeah, hopefully the week after. So we'll lock the rate in then, that's when we lock in the savings. And, we're really close now, within basically 2 weeks.
And just want to ask the
I just want to reiterate, the payment will be coming from the tip.
That's
I
correct.
just want to make.
Just like the 08s and the 09s, those come directly from the TIF. TIF 2 and TIF 3. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Okay, the next item is the equipment request. I wanted Kevin to come and explain to what we're trying to get in the village. And I'm sure everyone wants to know where the money's going to come from. He's going to explain that to you.
Well, we'll start off with how this all started off as a conversation. The public obviously has some concerns about the streets, the sidewalks, the trees, the lights, and everything else. We only have so many employees. We currently have 9 employees, 2 of which are pretty much stationed in the water department, so that breaks it down to about 7. The part-timers that we have, we appreciate enough to use them. They're helping us out tremendously with the grass cutting and landscaping and some other jobs we're doing, and we'll be moving into some tree work shortly. But the street work is the one that's the most obvious. People are always calling about potholes. They're calling about conditions of the roads. There's not a lot of money so far to come in to do a lot of the roads every year. We roughly do about 1 or 2 roads a year, depending on the money coming in. So we discussed a couple options. What can Public Works do to speed up some of the repairs that we're doing or the digs that we have done in the past? So there are a couple of these different pieces of equipment out there that would help us do this. Normally, if we have to dig out a patch or dig out anything that we've currently cut out for a water main break in the roadway, we'd have to bring the backhoe out, bring a saw out. We'd have to dig all the material out of it with the backhoe. It's usually more of a destructive kind of thing, because it's not a precise kind of thing. The piece of equipment I'm looking to purchase, or hopefully purchase, will be a skidster, which we have right now. It's a 2000 skid loader. It's a small track machine or a small wheel machine. I don't have any big pictures of it, but I did print out one if somebody has a question on it, if they want to look at it. That's a picture of the actual new one that we're looking at. So if anybody wants to take it. It's a 2000L, yep. This current one we have right now it's going to be 20 years old. It does not have a high flow system on it. This one here is a high flow. It has an enclosed cab, so it can be used in all seasons in the wintertime also. So that's why we looked at this one. It has the high flow pump on it, which is what most of the new equipment is using right now. It's a turnable piece of equipment. So we looked into some of the possibilities to speed up our work and possibly get some value out of the material we're actually removing. So this machine, we can hook up many different attachments to the front. They're called quick connects. It's two little latches, and then the front hook hooks it, and it's the other piece of equipment on there. The one we're looking at right now would be a planer. It's called a cold asphalt planer. Basically, the material that's on the ground right now, it's like a giant grinder, similar to like a stump grinder, which we had purchased recently. And what this does is you place it on the area that you want to remove. It could be a gravel area, it could be an asphalt area, it could be dug, pre-dug, or not dug. And it can go down about 5 inches into the surface. Most of our roads are around 4.5 inches thick before you hit the gravel underneath it. So if we have to do a patch, normally we would go by, we find the hole, we throw some material in there during the season, depending on what season it is. That can come out fast if it's in the winter, or it might stay all summer if it's hot patch and it's still not a perfect repair because the water still can get into the road. So this planer, what we can do with this thing is we can take this machine out by itself. You load whatever attachments you need on the trailer with it. It can be held by a smaller dump truck, which can haul the material where it's needed. And one individual could go out with another person with the brooms, and they can do the job by themselves. They can go out there and grind the road out. They can remove the material from the road, which is just going to be gravel now, because it's ground into material that we can actually reuse or recycle ourselves. We don't have to haul it over to Gallagher and recycle it through them, so there's a savings in the travel of that. We don't currently pay to dump the material, but there's still a travel time. So the material we're using, we can definitely reuse in another location or level this area and then add to it at that. So what we can do is this machine can go out on jobs, it can grind out a dozen locations, and then that machine can go away, and then you bring in the truck with the asphalt and the roller, and they go and they fill all these back in. Now these are permanent repairs, they're not a pothole patch, it's a permanent repair. So this will be done in a cleaner look. It may look like a patch, but it won't just be little holes all over the place. So as we started discussing that, we talked about renting one and seeing how it worked. I've seen enough of these work in the past. There's plenty of videos online you can look at if anybody's interested. Just hit cold planer, skidster, and it'll pop up on YouTube. So discussion with the mayor, we had talked about a couple different pieces of equipment. One was a hot box, which it's something that you could possibly use in the wintertime, but we don't really store enough material to have to concern ourselves with that. Or the cold planer, which we could even put cold patch in these cutouts, which will last longer than a winter patch. So there's a couple ways we can use it. So that's why we discussed the planer. And as we got to the planer, we started looking at some different sources. In all the past of everything I've ever ordered here, the boards have directed me and the mayors have directed me to get the lowest bidding price. So if we're on a bid co-op with CMS or somebody else, usually that's the lowest bidder anyway, so there's nobody that's going to beat it. So currently right now there's a bidding or a source that we have, it's called Sarswell. We've purchased our stump grinder out for that. We roughly saved about 30% on the price of the original price. Similar to this machine right now, we're saving 30%, so Sarswell is the lowest cost right now, according to all the pricing that I've checked. But currently, if we're looking at the machine we're looking at to purchase, the machine roughly is $56,000 minus 30%, which is $39,000. So it's a pretty good cost savings on the machine. They also are going to give us a trade-in value on our machine, which is about $6,800. So that brings just the machine itself, which is just the skidster, down to $34,918. Now, $34,918. So $6,800. So from 56 to 34,000 it came down to. Now the actual planer itself, there's a bunch of different kind of planers out there. This one's a Bradco. It's one of the heavier duty ones that they use out there. So this one here runs roughly around 24,000, and with the 30% it comes out to about $19,490. So combined, I have the total number here, but if you do the math, I think it's roughly around $54,000 for the total. So we didn't rent the machine originally like we wanted to, which would have been about $2,000 a week to rent it. So the discussion was to move forward on this machine here. So we were going to do some work around in different parts of the town, find a couple locations like public works, parking lots, different things like that, firehouse. We didn't get a chance to do that at this point. So I was asked to move forward on ordering this, and then we're back into this discussion right here now. So if there's any questions from here.
You were going to say where the money's coming?
Originally, the discussion was it was going to be out of the last year's budget. Our discussion about the budget, our street department budget and our water department budget are both together. It's been that way for just 10 years now. So basically, money that wasn't spent in the water department budget was going to be utilized for purchase of this equipment.
Use the mic, please.
It would have been whatever the expenditures that we didn't spend on some of the capital improvement stuff that we didn't spend yet. Roughly, there was three specific items that we did not purchase at the time, so it roughly came out to around $90,000. It wasn't from lack of needing it, just we didn't get an opportunity.
At 90,000 that you deal with.
Yeah, it's a rough, but it might be a little bit more than that, but it's right around 90.
Well, so, I understand what you're saying about the 90,000, but that was last year, so we're in a new budget cycle this year. And then, so I think that therefore it's an expense for this year, so we have to like keep that in mind as well. So that's basically, we're adding 54,000 to this year's budget, but we're buying it this year. So we can't, I mean, last year's closed, they're closed in the end of April. So I think we have to include it in this year's budget, which means that that's 54,000 we need for this year, that we're gonna have to take it out of the budget I presented to you, that you presented to us somewhere in that line item, right, out of your water sewer department. So we're gonna have to, as trustees, figure out what we need to cut 54,000 from if we're gonna do that. Because, last year's over. We're buying it right now, and this is this year. So I see what you're saying.
Well, I do have a suggestion. Okay.
Sure.
We had discussed, and I don't know what the final numbers of the budget are. I haven't seen any of whatever's in the budget at this point. So I did ask for a backhoe in the budget, which is roughly around $90,000. So if it was to push it off another year, I can do that. I wouldn't want to do it. I would get everything I could to make the job easier for us. But at this point right now, if I had to bump that, there would be a definite savings because then we're not going to spend the whole $90,000 anyway.
So if we do get the machine, I'm assuming we'll probably be here in a month or so. Do we have a plan of roads that we want to attack first?
Yeah, we're going to look at most of the roads right now. Currently we're working with a couple different sources with CMAP and everything, trying to figure out the streets in town and figure out the best method to get the most value out of extending their lives. And one of the methods is to do patch repair on some of the newer streets, which sounds kind of weird, but you patch up the ones that are newer, they don't fail as fast, they last longer. And there's a couple methods to do that, which is patch repairs, there's crack sealing, there's a couple other things. So we would look at some of the roads right now that we're having some maybe 5 years out issues, which most of it's around our storm sewer inlets, where the water sets the longest. If we can do those repairs to extend the life of that road, that'd be the way to do it. Or we drive down the middle of some of them, if you notice, like say 215th Street from Orion to Merrill, the center seam is coming out of there. We could drive that whole center seam down and pour an asphalt stream right in there and seal that road back up again. So these would be some of the avenues, the roads that can get the best value on right away, but also like the fire department. Their parking lot is completely shot. Normally we're adding asphalt on top of asphalt, or we're removing it all and trying to add a patch into a really tore up driveway. We could go in there and grind that all out, leave the material in place and asphalt over the top of it. So you actually add a little more base to the surface. Plus the public works yard, we've been asking for years ago to get that resurfaced, and we're starting to get some patch holes in there from the garbage trucks and the heavier trucks coming in the yard. So those are areas that we'd love to be able to attack, which without putting any burden on the budget itself.
And I noticed, I heard that you say we had about 9 people, but really 7 people. So do you plan to have like 2 people like dedicated to doing this patchwork for the rest of the year?
Public, we can't do that. We can't dedicate. Our goal is to do as much as possible with anything that we can utilize. But if we're looking at the grass cutting in the beginning, it was really bad this year. It dragged us out an extra month. We had the storm, which dragged us to the chipper. So now that we're caught up with the part-timers helping us with the grass, we can shift some of them to assist us with some of the more labor part of the job. So we can put a part-timer with a full-timer and they can be the ones helping them remove the material from the hole. So we're gonna gain the value from these extra employees right now, but some of the jobs they just can't, they can run the equipment.
Right. You need a license to run equipment, right?
Yeah, they just need more training and be more skilled on it. This one here in particular, some of the stuff we're getting now, you don't want to tear a piece of equipment up because you want to go fast.
Right.
Because it's just, they're like carbide teeth on the thing and you don't want to break those off. The stumper we have, we probably stumped almost near 80 stumps already, and we've only broke 2 teeth. And that was because there was actually metal in the tree stump from an old stake that was in the tree when it was planted. We had no idea. Rocks will do it too, but they usually just chip it. Now this piece of equipment also, we have some other infrastructure issues. We have streetlight issues right now. We have poles that are old, that are falling. We have wire issues. This piece of equipment has attachments that can go on the front end of it. One of the attachments happens to be a trencher. So that you can trench, you don't have to rent a trencher. We used to borrow a trencher from the town next door. Their trencher is old. They bought it many years ago, but we still use it and they still let us borrow it. But it's on its age and I don't want to break it, the last thing. So this would be an attachment we could rent or purchase over time. Our streetlight poles that are wood, in order to put that in the ground, we have to drill a hole. I have to rent an auger. So instead of renting it every time, if we decide to buy it, they're not very expensive. It might be $2,000 to buy it. And then you buy the bit you need, and you drill the holes you need for whatever. Setting park equipment for caissons, put in the ground through the concrete, and put bulbs in there, etc. Even planting new trees if we ever get some new trees. So these are all pieces of equipment that will attach to this skidster that will assist us down the line also. And the last piece of equipment is the final one, it's hard to get to every time, is our landscaping. This attachment that can go on here is like a rototiller, and it's a grader / rototiller, so it breaks up the material, breaks it all into fine material, and now you really just have to just generally level it. I don't have to bring a backhoe in here and just try to gouge the heck out of it, because the ground, usually when we pull it up and we put the dirt back over, it's the clay on top, and that's the hardest once it dries out. So there's a lot of value out of this piece of equipment. We've been using it for 20 years almost now, and we use it on a lot of stuff. So, and it's so standalone that you could put it on a trailer and drag it somewhere. And I can just attach a piece of equipment, attach another piece, and move on with 2 pieces of equipment on the job.
Is it worth keeping the home as well to help? Or I'm not going to get a refund, somebody towards it. Is it worth keeping it to do more work?
The guy who inspected it said it's in really good shape because we needed to park it inside, but when you look at 20-year-old piece of equipment, you've got to start to consider what some big money might have to go into that. Transaxles, auto transaxles are what's the start process when they start to fail. Those are very expensive. It's like half the equipment cost. The motor's the other half. So it's probably not value. We haven't had to do that yet at this point, but there's a process when it'll start to happen and it just goes down from there.
You're saying you're willing to go for the $9,000 for the backhoe. I would think that if you're willing to forego the $90,000 for the backhoe and you have accessories that could enhance this piece of equipment, would you be willing to invest the $90,000 in getting all these additional pieces of equipment and you've got everything you need at hand? It sounds like it's a great piece of equipment, but the accessories are also very helpful. We don't want to rent things that we don't need to rent or borrow things that we don't need to borrow. And you just said you've got $90,000 that you're willing to forego from the backhoe.
By all means,
If you're not going to get the backhoe, I mean, why don't we just equip this machine? It sounds like it's a one-stop shop.
I agree to a certain extent. I just don't see us using every attachment all at one time versus saying, hey, well, I'll get 2 or 3 attachments next year, next budget. Because, I mean, we don't have to spend the whole $90,000 now. We can spend the 54, and then maybe next year we'll get some more attachments. I mean, but it's Kevin's call. I mean, what do you think?
Speed of job, I would say, because of manpower. We're going to get to a lot of the asphalt stuff this year, and it'll be hit or miss. We got one pole right now that we have to replace, but we're going to pull the old one out of the hole, so we could probably just shave that hole. But they're going to start to fall here, so I would say yes, by all means. If we need to save the dollar right now, great. But if we have it, and everybody's willing to let us spend it, by all means, the equipment is great to have.
Okay, so with the 54, does it get any attachments other than just the grinders?
The grinder, and then you get a bucket attachment, a front bucket attachment, yes. And then we already have the forks for it, so we won't have to buy anything like that. We have an old bucket and then the fork that goes with the forks.
We can start off with that, and then as we need it, I'm sure we can, bring it back and we can, evaluate that. But right now, I'm gonna ask the board, does anyone object to it, or do I need to take a consensus to see if anybody doesn't want to, so we can go ahead and order it? It's August, so I'm looking to try to, if we can get it in, hopefully by the end of this month, we have at least 3-4 months to start using it. So if anyone, I'll start with Bernice, you have any objections to this?
I don't have any objection, I have a comment. Because this is so expensive, is it that we have to take this out for bid, or are we gonna waive the bid and, just go on and buy the equipment?
Like I said, and most of the time, if we don't have a source to get it from,
Okay.
a bidding source, then you would go out to bid, you get 3 competitive bids, comparison to what you're looking for, and then you take the bid you want, whether it's the low one or the best one. With this one here, like we do with our salt, like we did with the vehicles we purchased in the past, it came through a bid source already, so it's the lowest price. That's why it's 30% cheaper than wherever you go. If you went to a regular dealer and bought it, you're spending that 30%. You may get a 10% discount, but you're not going to get the full 30%.
Is that it?
Oh, yeah.
Trustee Zissou?
I'm good with it.
Trustee
I
Bell?
take it all.
That's a new one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm good. Trustee Grant? Trustee Todd?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
Chair Jones?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Pretty busy.
You busy?
I'm gonna take them out of order. See how we go tonight.
Some people call them bobcats. Stay clear. Get all the stairs.
Okay, the next item is the village administrator. I'd like for Ms. Michelle Royce to please come up. I'm sure everyone got a copy. If you didn't get a copy of her resume, please let me know.
I just need it.
You didn't get a copy?
I didn't check my mail, so that's it.
Who else did get a copy? Does anybody need a copy? You need a copy? Anyone else need a copy? You need a copy?
I did it.
Anyone else need a copy? That's okay, it's here.
I don't say it's nothing.
Okay. Madam Clerk, I have enough. I have enough. Wait.
Thanks.
Okay, Miss Michelle Royce is here, on behalf of Ambassador Brown. This is a person that I have felt, that I have, feel that would be an enhancement to the village as a village administrator. She's here to answer any questions that you guys may have. So we'll just leave it from that point, and we'll start, who wants to start first? Just start and ask questions.
Nobody
Can we just, give us a little bit about yourself before we just start asking questions? Is that okay? I asked her if she could just give a little bit about herself.
Can you get that mic? No, it's not. Turn it on. If you hold it, yeah.
Okay. Well, a little bit about myself. I guess it's more personal or professional. Explanation. Okay, I'll speak up. My name is Michelle Worcester, of course. I have 2 children. I have a son that's 19, a daughter that's 25. I've been married and I live in South Holland. I've been married for about, I think it's about 27 years. So my husband Benjamin. And I currently work for Cook County Department of Planning and Development in the Bureau of Economic Development. I got my bachelor's degree from the University of Illinois, my finance master's degree from Loyola, and my public administration degree from Keller. I have had a very, I've had extensive, I've had a variety of jobs. I've been in management a long time. My first management job, I was 26, and they made me a supervisor. I was working for Aon Corporation, and we did risk management. We did offshore companies, financial reporting and analysis, and from there it just took off. So I started out in corporate America. Then after I saw some things, did some things in corporate America, making a lot of money, I decided that it wasn't for me. So I decided to go into nonprofit. So I went into the nonprofit industry, and then from there I worked up until recently when I decided to go into government accounting. And it was by design, and that's the reason why I went back and got my master's in public administration.
Any questions?
Do you have any municipal experience working in a municipality?
Yes and no. No, in that I've never worked as a village administrator. I have worked as an administrator, an operations manager. I'm good with developing processes. I'm very good with developing budgets and managing finances. But the yes part of it is, well, while I work for Cook County Department of Planning and Development, I am tasked with the monitoring and the oversight of over 200 projects, and a large majority of those projects are municipal projects. So, I've monitored Wheeling, Lamont, Village of Lamont, Streamwood, a multitude of municipal entities. And my review of their financials, their financial management system, and everything that it entails, from the general ledger to the actual audits, to all of the compliance reporting, I oversee that. And based on that, and my recommendation, I can tell the deputy or the director, we need to not pay these guys. we need to hold off, we need some corrective action plans, we need to put some controls in place, and that's based on my review. So I'm very familiar with municipalities and how they work and how they create their financials and how they apply for government funding and the likes.
My concern is that you do not have the municipal experience as a village administrator. That's number one. Number two, I think your background is heavy in finance. I don't know if you're aware of the fact that we're looking for a finance director, and from what I'm hearing, you would be a perfect fit for a finance director, which is another position that we have open. And my third concern is, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but we've already hired a village administrator. You're coming in a little bit after the late in the game. One's already been hired, there's a contract in place, I don't know if you're aware of that. But my concern is that I'm impressed by your financial abilities and what you bring to the table in those regards, but I'm a little concerned, have you even seen what the job description for the village administrator is? It's more than just finances and government funding.
On that note, I just wanted to say that that next to the last part is going to be determined Friday, it's a court thing. So we really don't know what's going to happen, what's going to be determined until that time happens. So as far as the person already being hired right now, we can't say that because we have to wait to see what the court says. That's all I have to say about that part.
How do you know I'm ready?
Oh, I wanted to address that.
Well, yeah, I was hoping she would address it before somebody else came in.
Well, I'm very aware of the position of the village administrator. This is exactly what I wanted to do. It feeds into my aspirations. That's why I went and got the Master's in Public Administration. The village administrator is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the village. It encompasses everything other than finance. Finance being the strongest component. And a lot of times when administrators are presented with financial information, because they lack that knowledge, they're not able to decipher or to ascertain what exactly is being done, and they take it at face value. And that's something that I wouldn't be doing because of my finance background. So to say this, my experience is broad. Risk management, I know that. Okay, I had a license in insurance, and so I know that. Real estate, I know that. I've had those licenses too. When you talk about operations and design, I know that. You talk about implementation of new systems, software systems, how you integrate it. I went through at least 3 or 4 of those. We just went through one at the county. And I act as the liaison between the economics department and the controllers department, the finance and budget, because I can touch on all of those with a degree of professionalism and experience because I've done them all. So as far as, yes, I have a strong financial background, which most people don't have, but as far as village administrator, it would be, I'm sure it would be an asset instead of a hindrance, coupled with all my other experiences, because it's on your resume and there's things on there that you guys don't know. Like I had a plumber that I did his books for him, and we did all I learned the plumbing. I went to the union with him and made sure that he did his draws and all those things. So I've had a multitude of experience. So yeah, I think that I would be a good asset and a good village administrator because my background is so broad and it's not limited in scope. And I really don't have to take anyone's word for it. I can dig in, write it down, and figure out what is actually going on here. And to you, how do I know the mayor?
Yeah.
So about 3 months ago, maybe 4 months ago, I was talking around to some of my friends, because I'm in the community, and I was telling them that I was looking to come back into the south suburbs, and that I was really tired of going downtown to work and spending those 2 to 3 hours every day just commuting, and keep a lookout for me. And so one of the friends called me up and said, the village was looking for a village administrator, and I said, okay, sign me up, because that's just 15-minute drive from my house, and that's exactly what I would like to do.
Well, then, if I'm allowed to come back, if you heard about this 3 months ago, then that's approximately when we were first interviewing.
Oh, no, I just heard about it.
Oh,
Three
okay.
or 4
Maybe
months
I
ago, I
misunderstood.
put the word out that I was looking to come back into the community.
And the second part of my question was, would you be interested in something more like the finance, we're looking for a finance director?
No.
Because you're very heavy, strong in finance. You're
I
not
know.
interested in that.
I know, but I
was just curious.
no, because I wanted to be in public administration. I didn't want to work just in finance. I wanted to do the oversight of it.
To me, to me, you seem very well-rounded. So, I think that the financial experience is a help because as the board all has suggested that about cross-training. So therefore, we don't have a financial director that will be here too much longer. So therefore, why not? If she has experience in that, I think that she'll be an asset to the finance department. And we all talked about cross-training numerous times. Also, I see that you have some experience in HR and economic development. Can you explain that?
Yeah. I worked for I've done HR for a lot of nonprofits. I've been in labor negotiations. I've been where they took us down to the Department of Labor, the whole 9 yards. I've been there front and center. I have a tendency of not just going in and doing my job. I have a tendency of going in and learning the jobs. And a lot of times nonprofits, no matter how big they are, sometimes they have a lot of turnover in that area, and by me being maybe responsible for the payroll, it just worked out. And so several organizations, I did their HR for them, saved them a lot of money, and so I'm very familiar with that. I know that, I know how your manual should be written, and what not to say, what to say, how your manager should speak and talk to your employees, and when you're in a gray area, and if you get a claim from unemployment insurance, how to process that, what they're looking for, what are your chances of winning it, what are your chances of losing it. I've done it for several organizations. And the most recent one, I believe it was Claretian Associates. I did it for Claretian Associates, I did it for Community Service Options, I did it for community, I can't think of all of them. I've done it.
Are you familiar with any Illinois state statutes,
In regards to what?
just overall?
I think it would have to be, yeah, depending on what subject you're talking about, yes.
Just, okay.
Mhm.
And can you tell me anything about what you know about the overall financial picture of Sauk Village? Do you know anything about what's going on with our finances, or anything like that? I mean,
Mhm.
just off the cuff. I know you had to do a little research there, so.
Well, I did look at it. I try not to I try not to I try not to drive it down too far because I wanted to go for the village administrator position and I didn't want to get all hung up on the finances. And, but I do know that you guys are, your expenses exceed your revenue. I know that you're very heavy. The pie that I saw, it had very high expenses for legal fees, which was like odd to me. I saw, it was like, well, what's going on with legal fees? But, and I know you guys have these bonds and these tips. And it was encouraging to see the guys here today, saying what they were saying, and tips usually run about 23 years, so I was thinking that, 10 more years, and at a better price, that's a great deal. But I did look at it briefly, and I know this is not going to be a cakewalk. It's not, and it is not the first time. I've gone into organizations where they had no internal controls, or at least they thought they had internal controls. And we really had to reorganize the whole thing. And I can give you references and they'll tell you today, Michelle, I didn't believe it was going to work. I didn't think it was necessary, but they don't. But they're grateful and thankful that it's there and that that I was able to convince them that this is what we needed to do.
Any other questions?
Sorry, can't say it.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to Michelle for her work for coming out and giving your resume and explanations and answering the questions. And we'll probably be in contact with you after the week is out, so probably Monday, for an answer.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Next item, public comment. You might want to take that mic up to the podium. All questions and comments must be directed to the mayor. Each speaker is allowed one opportunity to speak up to 3 minutes on the agenda items only. And as always, there will be no debating. Personal, I will stop it, and I will answer all the questions at the end. When you come up, please state your name.
Pat Couch. I find it a little bit disconcerting that you would call in a person for an interview when we do have a contract for someone. And I heard you state that we do go to court regarding that. Wouldn't it have been a little more professional to wait until that court date? Then you could bring somebody in if that were the case. but I think you're shooting ahead of yourself, which is normal, that you would bring somebody in for a position that you know there is a contract. The man is waiting for his position to start his job, which you kept him from the building when he reported to work. That's a shameful thing to do to somebody when you know it goes to court on Friday, and embarrassing to the residents that you would do that.
Hello, Arnold Coleman. Just in witness of that interview, I think that's a good catch. I think we ought to hire this lady here. We just had an interview with you. I think her resume is more than what we need, and as the cross-training and everything, she would be perfect for what she could fill in. Until we do get a finance officer, I think she's a good fit.
Judy Cast here. I agree that the resume sounded amazing. I also agree with Pat Couch. There was an opportunity for you to save grace and make it after the court hearing, but it wasn't done. I think that's an embarrassing situation. I also feel that you put her in a situation that she shouldn't be in, knowing that somebody else was hired and has a contract. And you didn't take part in the hiring of the person, but you were there at the interviews. That doesn't answer anything. I think that, again, she's got a lot of experience behind her. What is she gonna charge us? Are we gonna have another HR that's gonna have $85 an hour? Those are things that have to be taken into effect too. We're talking about buying equipment for public works, and he's gonna have to give up something to get something. And we don't have the kind of money that we were giving our HR lady to start with. And what are the plans on paying this lady? She's got a lot of experience. Is she entitled to it? Yes, she is. But if she wants that kind of money, she shouldn't come to Sauk Village. Neither should our ex-HR lady. She might have had the experience, but we didn't have the money. And she shouldn't have been brought here for that kind of money and the few hours that she put in on a weekly basis and got that kind of money. And I feel that the consideration in, I just admire the trustees that you even asked her questions, because you yourself already hired somebody. And so I have to commend you for that. It would have been a little embarrassing to have one trustee ask one question.
You have 50 seconds.
So I feel that you're on the right road, and I think Friday's going to tell a story, and I think the story is going to be in your favor. You did things legally, you did things right, you did things according to law, at least from what we're hearing and what you say and what's out there. Therefore, again, I commend you, and even though the lady sounds good and her resume sounds great, there's obstacles in place, and those can't be pushed aside. It has to be done in a favorable manner, and so again, I feel that when the calling went out for a village administrator, that if you made it, you made it. If you didn't, you didn't. You know, what can we do? We've hired somebody else. I have no idea about whether the person that got hired is as knowledgeable as she is, but it's a done deal, and it needs to be handled properly. And I look forward to the trustees doing that according to whatever that judge says Friday. And I wish you well, and I'll pray for you all. Thank you.
Heidi Parker. I'm a little bit surprised that you're all of a sudden bringing someone in. And just last week, I believe, you stated you do not need an administrator. And did you do a search? Those are my questions.
Okay, we'll go around the table, if trustees have anything to say, trustee, they're all kind. No, I mean, yeah.
That's the last question.
You have a comment? Trustee,
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
You stated that you weren't even interested in a village administrator, and now all of a sudden, you put this on a special meeting agenda. When we interviewed, you didn't even look at the candidates. You didn't want to hear what they had to say. So I find it quite interesting that all of a sudden now you and Trustee Grant are all for the administrator. That's my comment.
Trustee Brown? Trustee Grant? Trustee Todd? Trustee Williams?
I agree. I'm also very disappointed that this didn't happen during the time that we've made it known since May 21st that this was our intention, and we put we posted the notice and we had interviews, and at the time we brought people in, you were adamant against the village administrator, and I would have preferred to have an option of having more than the 4 candidates that we interviewed. I think it would have been great if she would have been there at the time. The interviews were cut off at a certain date. A person was hired. That person should have been able to go to work July 19th, I think it was, with a signed contract. And my concern is we may have to pay him for the time that he hasn't been able to work because he did have a signed contract. So we need to be aware of that. We hired him. He just wasn't able to do his job. Doesn't mean that he's not entitled to get paid. So my concern was all people should have been interviewed at the same time. So yes, I think that she'd been interviewed at the time that the other 4 were interviewed, we would have had more discussion and we might have had a harder time making a choice. But the fact is, we did make a choice, and that's all I have to say. And we'll wait till Friday.
Yes, I did make the statement that I didn't feel at the time that we needed to have for the first 2 years. We got by pretty good. We saved money, was able to still do day-to-day without that. And I told this board when it first came in, however, this board decided to take it upon themselves to enact and draw an ordinance to take that power away. If I decided to do that, to appoint a person, take that power away from them to a point, that's when I decided and I said, okay, well then if that's the case, then if the board wants one, I would love for it to be my decision. But the ordinance was drafted, because had he came in from day one and said, Mayor, what's going on? What do we have? What's in the queue? What's going on? Where are we at right now? Financially, legislatively, everything. Where are we at? Let's sit down, let's talk about that. Can you give us an overview? Can you give us an outline of what's happening? Day one, I got a packet that said, this is what we're going to do, this is how it's going to do, and this is what's going to happen. So I've been on the defense since May 21st, trying to defend everything that was brought before me and not even discussed. Because I do remember previous board, when we talked about ordinances and resolutions before we voted. We weren't handed these things at that time, that they were made up prior to that. And I know, I can't prove it, but I know there was meetings after April, when the election was over with. There were meetings. But no one says, no one on this board says that they talked prior to that. So those ordinances and resolutions just materialized and we're going to vote on it. So at that point, I said, okay, if this board really wants to have it, this is what you want to do, okay, fine. But it was voted that that option is taken away from me as the mayor, That's why we report come Thursday, come Friday, spending all this money back and forth to ratify something that should not even be an issue. It shouldn't be an issue. However, it is one. It is, but it's your money. And this is just one of many things that we're spending money on that I don't think makes sense. But this is where we're at. Yes, if someone is going to take things away, yes, I'm going to fight for it. I fought to become mayor. I'm going to fight for everything I think that this village needs in a positive direction. So, that being said, I'll take a motion to adjourn. So moved. Second. Motion carries.